in and then out. All right? Strap yourselves in, because today we're going deep on the Terminator franchise. Not just listing the movies, though. We're digging into the themes, the behind-the-scenes battles for the rights, some fun facts, even the stuff die-hard fans might miss. What's really fascinating about the Terminator, you know? It's not just killer robots from the future. It taps into our real anxieties about technology, free will, what it means to be human. Right? Humanity versus Skynet, self-aware AI that decides humans are the problem and wipes us out. Judgment Day, the day Skynet becomes self-aware. But the date shifts across the movies. In Terminator 2, it's 1997, but their actions push it back. In Terminator 3 and Salvation, it's July 2003. Sarah Connor Chronicles even puts it in 2011. So this shifting Judgment Day isn't just a plot device. It makes you think about the butterfly effect, right? If the future can be changed, does that mean we actually have free will? Or are we all just pawns in some grand cosmic chess game? Whoa, now that is getting deep. It really makes you wonder if any of our choices really matter. But before we spiral into an existential crisis, let's talk about something almost as dramatic, the battle for the franchise rights. It's a saga worthy of its own movie. It all starts with James Cameron selling the rights for $1. $1? Seriously? It's wild. Was he incredibly naive? Or was there some deeper strategy? Definitely a gamble. He believed in the project, but maybe underestimated its future value. Whatever the reason, those rights went on a wild ride, passing from Hemdale to Carolco to Mario Casa, the original film's producer. Even Pacificor for a while, before finally landing with Megan Ellison and Skydance Productions, like a hot potato being tossed around. And all these ownership changes, they must have had some impact on the films themselves, right? You hit the nail on the head. It's almost like you can see those behind-the-scenes power struggles reflected in the franchise's inconsistent quality. For instance, in 2007, the rights were sold to the Halcyon Company for $25 million, right before Terminator Salvation. And that didn't exactly set the box office on fire, did it? No, not quite. A year later, Halcyon faces legal issues, files for bankruptcy. The rights are back on the market, this time with a $70 million price tag. Geez, talk about a roller coaster. Okay, so we've got these big ideas about humanity's future, a wild history of ownership changes. Now let's dive into the movies themselves. Starting with The Terminator, 1984. A masterpiece of low-budget filmmaking that introduced us to this dystopian future where machines rule. We meet Sarah Connor, this ordinary woman suddenly thrust into this fight for survival against this relentless cyborg assassin, the Terminator, and Kyle Reese, sent back to protect her. Amazing how it manages to be both a thrilling action flick and a thought-provoking exploration of fate versus free will. And you can't talk about this movie without mentioning Arnold Schwarzenegger's iconic performance. I'll Be Back. Instant classic. Then comes Terminator 2. Judgment Day, 1991. Blows everything out of the water, takes everything that worked in the first film and cranks it up to 11. Fascinating because it goes beyond the action. We see Sarah Connor transformed from a terrified waitress into this hardened warrior, the ultimate protective mother. Arnold's back, but this time he's the hero, protecting John Connor from the even more advanced T-1000. And the visual effects. The T-1000 with its liquid metal morphing abilities, groundbreaking. No wonder it won multiple Academy Awards, including for those incredible effects. But what's really interesting about T2 is how it taps into this primal fear of parents, the length they'll go to protect their children. It takes the classic hero's journey and gives it this deeply personal, emotional core. It's not just about stopping Skynet. It's about this mother and son fighting for their lives and for each other. That's what makes T2 so much more than just an action movie. What happens after that? Does the franchise manage to keep up this momentum? Well, that's where things get a little bumpy. James Cameron steps away. And the following films, they face a bit of an uphill battle, both critically and commercially. So is it fair to say that James Cameron's departure kind of marks this turning point in the franchise's history? Like maybe his vision was what held everything together? That's a really interesting question. Yeah, it's certainly true that his unique blend of action, visual storytelling, and those thought-provoking themes are hard to replicate. But let's dive into those later films and see what they bring to the table. Maybe they offer something different. So, Terminator 3, Salvation, Genesis, the later films, they take interesting detours. There's a lot more to unpack there. And then, of course, Terminator Dark Fate in 2019. It's like hitting the reset button, ignoring the previous 3 films, and going straight back to the roots of T2. A gamble that didn't quite pay off at the box office, sadly. But it does raise an interesting question about what it means for a franchise to escape its past. Can you really ignore those other films and pretend they didn't happen, or do they still have an impact on how we see the Terminator universe as a whole? That's a great point. It's like trying to erase history, but the echoes are still there. But hey, before we go down that rabbit hole, you mentioned that there's a whole world of Terminator stories beyond the movies. The Terminator universe is vast. TV series like the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which explores an alternate timeline. Terminator Zero, an anime series set in Japan. Crossover comics, Terminator vs. RoboCop, Terminator vs. Superman. Even Alien vs. Predator vs. the Terminator. What? Skynet gets its hands on xenomorph DNA. Things get seriously messy. That's like a horror movie fan's dream come true, or nightmare depending on how you look at it. But these crossovers aren't just mindless action. They seem to touch on deeper themes. They make us ask what happens when unstoppable forces collide. Right. And the Terminator comics that stick to the franchise's own lore. Plenty. Dark Horse Comics had a long run, diving deep into different corners of the timeline. There's one series that follows John Connor leading the Resistance in 2031, really fleshing out that post-Judgment Day world. What's life actually like for the survivors? It's one thing to see those glimpses in the movies, but to really explore the day-to-day struggle, the constant fear, it's grim for sure. And then there are video games, which offer that immersive experience, tie-ins with the movies, games that forge their own paths, and mobile games, Terminator-themed strategy games, where you're not just fighting machines, you're competing against other humans. Talk about a bleak commentary on our nature. But beyond the action and the strategy, these games force you to make tough choices. Do you sacrifice a few to save the many? How far are you willing to go? And speaking of books, the novels, those are where you can really dive deep into the characters' heads. Novels add that extra layer of depth and complexity. They introduce new concepts, new Terminator models, alternate timelines. They've actually had a significant impact on shaping the franchise. It's amazing how all these different mediums, movies, TV shows, video games, novels, theme park attractions even, come together to create this expansive Terminator universe. They each offer a unique perspective. There are theme park attractions like T2 3D, Battle Across Time at Universal Studios. It was groundbreaking with the live-action stunts, 3D film, special effects. You felt like you were right there. Directed by James Cameron himself. Other Terminator attractions too, roller coasters, laser tag. It's really amazing how the franchise has found its way into so many different forms of entertainment. What's the final takeaway? The Terminator franchise is more than just entertainment. It reflects our hopes and fears about the future, our complex relationship with technology, our enduring capacity for both resilience and destruction. It gives us iconic characters, memorable quotes, and serious food for thought about the choices we make and the world we're creating. It's a cultural phenomenon that continues to evolve, finding new ways to resonate with each generation. Who knows what the future holds for the Terminator franchise? But one thing's for sure, it'll keep us talking, debating, maybe even looking over our shoulders for those red glowing eyes. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Terminator franchise. The future isn't set. It's up to us to write the next chapter. Until next time.